So welcome back. Let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our next session chair. He is Bob from ESG. He has been writing number of blogs and number of articles about OpenFlow and SDN. So I believe it is safe to say he buys into OpenFlow and SDN, and he's going to lead this session that is about standardization and adoption. Okay. So Bob, here is.
Ooh. Thank you, Guru. So hope everyone's settling in from lunch. Food coma's not too bad right now. You got to walk around the exhibits and get some energy out, so hopefully that's going to help you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here, as most analysts would probably want to do, just to hear myself talk. But I think there's a really great opportunity for everyone in this room, and obviously we should thank ONF for putting on this whole summit to allow people to come in and hear a lot of these talks from a lot of the industry experts and leaders in the field so that everyone can get a little bit better educated on what OpenFlow and what SDN can potentially do for you. As an analyst, we do a lot of research, and so we clearly see some of the issues that a lot of you are facing in your networks, whether it be on the carrier or cloud or service provider side, or even the enterprise, with so many organizations consolidating data centers, trying to build out multi-tenant data centers, increasing their use of server virtualization, even maturing those into private clouds. The need to have a highly dynamic and scalable environment is becoming more and more important, and one in which the network really needs to be able to step up and meet the same time frames that the server and storage environments can do. So we at ESG see a lot of opportunity in software-defined networking, and we see a lot of potential for the OpenFlow standard. So that's why I was very pleased to be chairing this session on standardization and adoption. And I think we've got a great lineup of speakers for you. We're going to have Dan Pitt coming up, and he's going to be talking about the OpenFlow standard, where it is, and what's going on with that. So you'll get to answer, get all your questions answered as to its current state, maybe even some future state he might let up as well. We've got Stu Elby, who's going to be coming up from Verizon, who's going to give you sort of a perspective from a service provider so that you can understand how they're thinking about using software-defined networking, how OpenFlow fits into their environments. We've got Shazad Merchant from Extreme Networks, so giving you a perspective from an enterprise networking vendor and what they see as the role for OpenFlow and software-defined networks. And lastly, we've got Greg Papadopoulos, who's going to come up and give his take on, sort of from the venture capital side, where they see the market evolving and where they see it heading. So I think we've got a great lineup here, and I encourage you to ask questions and make sure that you get out of this what you want to. And I think at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to Dan, and let's get this started.
Thank you, Bob. Well, hello, everyone. Nice to see you. So my talk today is, this is great. You can't see your slides from there. SDN standards, what and whatnot. So there's a lot of whatnot involved. But in particular, I'm going to tell you what we're standardizing and what we're not standardizing, but in general, what we're doing. So I'm hoping to talk a little bit today about these things that you'll remember, just sort of 4 points. What is our progress? And that's in the technical work. What is our growth and momentum? That represents, of course, the movement we stand for. What is our position in the standards community, because we are in that community? And then where do we go from here and what's coming next? How do I start the timer? Okay, it started. So I have 2 slides on what we do. The first one is not standards. That's the next one. We are not just a standards development organization. We exist to commercialize and make successful the whole SDN movement. So commercialization is foremost in our mind. In fact, Thursday the board is meeting, and we're going to talk about our goals for the next year, because we just celebrated our one-year anniversary and my first full year with ONF. And so they've got some goals for me, which are organizational goals. Well, it's to make this movement successful, to create a vital market. That's our real mission. How do we do that? Well, in everything we do, we try to advance that cause. So you see that is our mission statement. We want to make this the new norm for networks. That's the ubiquity. I'll talk about how we're user-driven. We were created to put the users in the driver's seat. And you see our board here, and you've seen some of them on the program. You'll see some more today. And then we have a large number of organizations, and I'll show those to you also. But we always keep in mind, as I'm writing our goals, this is our mission. Standardization is part of what we do. It's not all that we do. It's been a large part of what we've done in the first 12 months because we need to build the foundation before we build the edifice that lives on top of that. So the unique power in the board is that, first of all, there are no vendors on the board, and that's not an accident. And it is only the board that can charter the work, charter the working groups for defined lifetimes and deliverables, and appoint the chairs of the working groups and committees. The board can appoint people from vendors or users, but they're beholden to the board for a set of deliverables and adherence to the goals of the organization. We strive very hard to make sure the standards are written by people who have a commercial stake in the outcome. It's one reason we don't attract individuals. They can't really afford to join. That's partly by design, because a lot of people have great theories about stuff and want to explore stuff, but if they don't have a commercial stake in the outcome, I don't want them making the decisions about what we actually do standardize. Because we're not measured by the number of standards we produce, we're standardizing only what we have to. That helps us move faster and eliminates a lot of wasted effort in the industry. It's got another reason. As networking becomes more and more a software discipline, we follow the regimens of the software industry, which is that a lot of stuff gets standardized in the marketplace and not in a smoke-filled room by a committee. By being rapid and real world, that shows we try to keep in touch with the market, and that comes up in some of what we do that will respond to some of Gang Lin's valid observations this morning. We're based in Palo Alto. We really think of ourselves as a startup. We're a nonprofit, but we run like a startup. We try to be lean, we try to be agile, try to keep close to the market and understand the needs of our customers. So we do things in these sort of areas, standards development, and I'll talk about those. As I mentioned, we try to move quickly and make the standards relevant to the market. We are standardizing OpenFlow. Somebody has to. We're also working in architecture and framework activities for the abstractions above OpenFlow, and I'll explain what we're doing with those, and some of those interfaces that go along with it, because we want our customers, especially the service providers and the cloud data center operators, to be able to offer services that they can charge for and offer SLAs on. So this infrastructure is there for a purpose. It's not an end in itself. It's only a means. Since we met last in October, we have established a market education effort and committee, which has been extremely busy, and they've made me extremely busy, to help the market understand what this all means and what its benefits are. So if you look at our white paper, we don't talk a lot about what the technology is. We talk more about what it can do for customers and users. And the intellectual property aspect just proves to be a key differentiator in attracting and retaining members, because we don't pay lawyers for a lot of stuff. We don't have haggling times over, is this a reasonable term and condition for intellectual property? We bypass that. It's royalty-free, no arguments. So this chart you've seen in various incarnations, I'm sure. We have the switches and the data plane. We separate it from the forwarding plane, which is separated in some kind of a software instantiation. And then we have the applications, which I've listed here, sort of network types of applications, not payroll and the such. And so this should be fairly familiar. But I'm going to show the same picture with different words on the right-hand side. From the control plane software down to the switches, we have standardized protocols, and that is where OpenFlow comes in. If it is the control plane software that determines the forwarding paths, these are the routes through the network that meet the needs of the policy and everything else above in traffic engineering, the switches need to find this out to load their forwarding information bases. So that's just what the OpenFlow protocol does. Because these things are separate, it simply needs to be a protocol. So we are standardizing the OpenFlow protocol. It doesn't live anywhere else. It lives in ONF. Above this, we have programmable interfaces. These are interfaces to the applications, to the services, to the other controllers. Gang Lin mentioned this morning. What about controller to controller? Service providers have said, how do I offer an end-to-end service in cooperation with other service providers to my customers? So we talk about the so-called northbound API on the top of the control plane. There's also eastbound and westbound. We are exploring these. We cannot tell you today what should be standardized and what does not need to be standardized, but we have the experts. We are going to understand them and describe them and give insight to the people that are building software either below or above the northbound API. Now, one thing interesting about the northbound API on top of the controller is nobody knows what its latitude is. Is it 40 degrees, 67 degrees, or 89 degrees north? What's below the interface and what is above it? It's too soon to tell. We are promoting commercialization so we get feedback from the market that will inform future decisions. So we are organized now into these working groups and committees. And the ones that, they're a little odd, and this chart is not too easy to read, but it'll be online, and you can see it. Extensibility is where the OpenFlow switch protocol gets standardized. There's a reason for the name. It's kind of accidental. Configuration and management should be obvious. We approved our first standard in January. Testing and interoperability, increasingly important. We held our first Plug Fest in March. We're having demos at Interop in Las Vegas and in Tokyo. We are doing whatever we can to enable vendors to see that their stuff works and it works with each other so the customers can buy it and rely on it. We have our newest working group is the hybrid working group, Hybrid Programmable Forwarding Plane. And the mission from the board is, tell us how to build hybrid networks and hybrid switches. What do we need to know about legacy control planes interacting with an OpenFlow control plane? There's a discussion group that's not yet chartered as a working group called OpenFlow Future. Well, they have honed in on looking at forwarding plane models. One of Gang's comments was, had to do with merchant silicon, and I'll address sort of that rate of change. But right now, it's very kind of TCAM focused, and we don't want it to be quite so focused on that. It's important right now to understand how these things work. So we're looking at how does a controller know that it is talking to either, say, a merchant silicon implementation, or a network processor implementation, or a purely software implementation of the switch. And we really want to insulate as much as we can and put an abstraction there for the controllers beyond what is there now. So they're making terrific progress. And we finally have some interesting activity in the northbound API SDN abstractions discussion group, where we want to understand what those interfaces and APIs should look like. How do they convey the capabilities of the network to the applications that need to use the network? And then we have the market education. So you can see we have hundreds of people in each of these activities, and we're somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people. Just goes to show the degree of interest among our members and the industry. The OpenFlow standard is what we have clearly been focused on. It is the foundation. Once you have separation of control and forwarding, you want some way to do it, communicate those paths. The industry would like a standard. The customers would like a standard instead of the proprietary things. That's what Guido talked about as well. So you can see here that we inherited 1.0 and 1.1 from Stanford University, and then we issued 1.2 after our meeting in October. It came out in December. The configuration spec in January. OpenFlow 1.3, I'm taking to the board on Thursday. We'll see what they say. It's added some additional things, and then we have to hope to have the first test spec coming out in the summer with the test cases for conformance. Now, Gang observed that the OpenFlow standard has been a moving target for the merchant silicon vendors. And we agree that it has. We've issued these releases on a schedule, calendar-based, not feature-based, because we really had to do a lot of catching up. We understand also that having a stable target is also important for the market implementation to catch up with the standardization. So I'll be talking to the board about this on Thursday, and with a proposal to make 1.3 and its fixes a stable target for a while. The board of directors, the companies have not changed except that we added NTT Communications in December, and you'll hear from Yukio Ito, our board member, in a talk tomorrow. You'll hear from Stu Elby in this session here today, and you'll hear from Axel Klauberg also before the summit is out. So the people can change, but the companies that founded ONF remain on the board and very influential. It's a terrific board because they actually run things pretty tightly and keep us focused on our objective. These are the members we have as of today. We're now 66. I don't think there are any sectors of the industry that are missing here. One of the other comments that Geng made was, what about skills? What about training? We actually have a training company that's a member. We have testing companies now. We have tiny startups, big companies, companies on almost every continent. And we certainly have members of the companies on every continent. We've added computer companies. We've added enterprises, users of the SDN technology to this list. So chips, software, system vendors, computer companies really covers the spectrum. Our focus for this year is these three things. Let's make sure we have a strong technical foundation for this that people can rely on, so we are continuing to extend it where we need it, building out the base to include configuration. That work will continue, as well as testing and interoperability. We are doing whatever we can to encourage implementation. Let's get stuff out there in the hands of customers. Let's get some trials. Let's get the feedback. Let's make sure it meets the market need. And we're evangelizing by telling the story, not of the technology, but of its benefits. And this is where the Market Education Committee comes in. So these are my marching orders from the board for this next year. I think this is what you will see ONF do. We are bringing together this community. We're trying to strengthen it with solid footings that they can actually build products and services around. Our success is measured by their success. We do have a working relationship now with a number of other standards bodies, and I mentioned these here. We have liaison statements that will be going out soon officially. We're actually looking to the Internet Assigned Numbers organization there for a code point registry for the code points that we need to define. It saves us from having to do that. And we are leveraging standards where they exist and they meet our needs. We are not trying to do any more than we absolutely have to do. We're on the new work mailing list, so we keep them informed of our new work and they keep us informed of their new work, so we know what each other is doing very well. So what is our progress? Well, clearly we've made progress in things we've done. The important part about that progress is that it's relevant to the market. That's the only kind of progress we really want to make. Our growth and our momentum, as you can see by the size of this room, is beyond just about anybody's prediction. We're thrilled with it. It shows that there's something solid here that can bring benefits to those people who use and depend on networks. And we have a position in the Standards Committee that is unique. And we think it's pivotal in that it's doing really important work that other people want to interface with, work around, and coordinate with. And so I think we're a player now in the standards community that are our peers in that regard. So this year it's happening. Next year is going to be even more amazing, and I'm happy to take your questions.
James Kemp from Ericsson. Has there been any progress in putting a procedure in place for academic institutions to become members of ONF?
It's partially in place, James. We have defined a role of academic associates that gives them participation rights. It's not membership per se. We've actually granted that to 4 individuals who will be principal investigators for their universities. 2 of them are speaking today, Jennifer Rexford from Princeton and Nick Feemster from Georgia Tech. The other 2 are speaking also, Matt Davey from Indiana, and the 4th one is Guru Parulkar himself representing Stanford University. We haven't yet quite got to where we have an application for others, either for our members to nominate their research affiliates or for people to volunteer themselves. We will be getting to that in the next coming weeks. With no further questions, turn it back over to Rob. Thank you very much.